calls are growing for more criminal investigations into allegations of abuse at former residential schools in this country. Sexual, physical, and psychological abuse that was widespread and went on for decades. The RCMP Major Crimes Unit is in the midst of a criminal investigation into abuse at the former Fort Alexander Residential School northeast of Winnipeg.
In my heart of stone, wisdom of the elders helped set my heart free from the sins of the residential school we should connect today. I learned how to hate and I learned how to fight and love had no room in my heart of stone. I bet sick to walk and I'm alone to find love I had to forgive. With forgiveness, I found a way, a way, a way, a way. I found love, way, a way, a way, a way. I found love again. Thank you, Alex, so much.
My son, when they took you away, you were so young and strong. I just couldn't wait for the day to have you back home where you belong. The only thing that kept souls who passed, whose world didn't last. We're here to sing your song, 'cause although you may
RCMP arrested 92-year-old retired Father Arthur Masse on one charge of indecent assault. The alleged offense occurred between 1968 and 1970, involving a 10-year-old girl at the school. In total, 75 statements were obtained by police, leading them to lay this charge.
And being here today and speaking to you about this investigation, we are certainly not trying to make this about the RCMP and the work done by investigators. Our focus today, as it has always been, is the victims of crime. The victim in this case has endured a lot throughout the investigative process and has stood firm in speaking out about what happened to her. The most important thing to her today is she was heard.
More women have come forward with allegations of abuse by a former priest at this Manitoba residential school. Arthur Masse was charged last week in the sexual assault of a 10-year-old girl more than 50 years ago.
RCMP won't confirm who the girl is, but McIntosh tells us it's her. She says she went to police after remembering a story her grandmother had told her.
We were looking at this big, giant turtle, like, crossing the road. And she said in our language, that turtle makes way. Like that. You know, we're not just, I am from Turtle Clan, and makes that way, that road. And that's what I wore my first day of residential school.
When Victoria McIntosh first arrived at the Fort Alexander Residential School, she was proud of her new jacket, but it never made it into the school.
The nun, after I realized it was a nun, she took my jacket off, threw it at my mom.
Her mother saved her tiny wool jacket and gave it back to her years later, reminding McIntosh of the painful secret she had held onto for decades.
This is me here. I recognized myself right away.
She alleges she was sexually assaulted by the school's priest when she was 10 years old.
He was nice. He was, figured he was soft in his mannerism, but it was, at the same time, he reminded me of a snake.
Alma Mann-Scott was just 5 when she was forced to attend the Fort Alexander Residential School.
All the memories from over 50 years ago are just fresh today.
Scott attended while Father Arthur Masse worked there. She was a day student. What do you remember about this place from when the school stood?
Stuff that I would rather not talk about in public. It's horrible what happened.
Some of the things she saw and heard about still haunt her.
I just feel like crying because I saw a little boy running from a nun and he jumped off the 3rd floor and he didn't move again.
One of the chilling things left on this site of the old residential school, these cellar holes. Survivors tell me children were put here when they misbehaved.
I don't know why they left it there. As soon as I saw it, I have memories to that.
I'm just going to show you a photo. Do you recognize this man?
Yes. Yes, Father Masse.
Marilyn Corshane was only 6 or 7 when she met him.
So all of a sudden I could feel my neck being touched, like skin to skin. You know what I'm saying? Like this.
Corshane says she's looking forward to seeing him in court next month.
It'll be a good step to move forward and say, finally, I don't have to hold this inside and just write it on paper, right? Because it's bad. You know, that's a tough thing that a child had to wait this darn long.
McIntosh wants to create that path for others. According to school records, Masse worked at residential schools in both Manitoba and Ontario. McIntosh hopes anyone with similar stories will come forward.
The residential school, it was just like, it looks like a big box of ugly secrets. That's what I see. And now it's falling down.
RCMP say since the charge, a number of former students have contacted them.
Yes, that's him. That's him.
Maureen Fontaine looks at a photo of Father Arthur Masse, the retired priest charged last week.
It takes her back more than 5 decades to the time she was a student at the Fort Alexander Residential School.
And I had to go to the washroom. So the priest took me downstairs in the basement, and there was no washroom there. Did things to me that a little child shouldn't have gone through.
After years of therapy, she's finally ready to tell her story.
It has to be around here somewhere.
Back in Sagkeeng, Maureen Fontaine is looking for her father's grave in the cemetery beside the former residential school site. She says he too was a student there.
He was badly abused, very much so.
Fontaine plans to be in court next month when Masse makes his first appearance on the charge already laid. If she gets a chance to talk to him,
I would tell him how much of my life he took.
But now she's hoping to take back her life by speaking out.
So there's a sense of urgency. I would suggest that, to follow up, to pursue justice on behalf of residential school survivors before those individuals, before those perpetrators, those abusers die. We know that there are perpetrators of really grotesque, savage violence on the bodies of children as young as 4 or 5 who are still alive today and walk around with impunity, who have never had any semblance of punishment or consequence for their behaviors.
was 5 years old, that it changed that day forever. I was placed by force to go to residential school, myself and my brother. And it was like that. It was the law of the land.
She spent the next decade at the Fort Alexander Residential School northwest of Winnipeg.
The 10 years that I spent in residential school was the most awful years of my life. Awful because I was torn away from a loving home with siblings and a mom and dad that were loving, and we were happy. We knew, we whispered, and a lot of children talked about it. There was abuse, and it was common knowledge, but like I said, our lips were sealed. We couldn't talk about it.
Chief Fontaine, what information did you bring to the church authorities you met with in Winnipeg today?
We talked about physical abuse, we talked about psychological abuse, deprivation, and of course, sexual abuse.
What form of abuse were you talking about in your own case?
Well, that's something that's, as you well understand, incredibly delicate, sensitive, and very, very much a private matter.
It will require a deep commitment, courage, and determination to speak the truth about this experience that really represents a missing chapter in Canadian history.
Support available for anyone affected by the lingering effects of residential schools and by these latest reports. A national Indian residential school crisis line has been set up offering emotional and crisis referral services. You can reach that number 24 hours a day at the number you see on your screen.
Theodore Fontaine is a former chief of the Sagkeeng First Nation and author of the memoir Broken Circle, The Dark Legacy of Indian Residential Schools. He offered some candid thoughts on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's approach to Indigenous issues and the importance of educating new Canadians on Aboriginal history.
I hope he's learned a lot from his father's mistakes. You know, one of the major attempts to get rid of Two of the major attempts to get rid of us were, first of all, it started off with the treatise. And then David, and then Mr. Scott from the Indian Affairs Department in the 20s, getting rid of the Indian child. And then 1969, Pierre Elliott devising a paper called the White Paper. to do away once and for all with Indian people. I have faith in this new Prime Minister that he's going to look at this very, very seriously and come to terms that we don't have an identity in Canada. And the major identity that we're missing is the first characteristics of who we are in Turtle Island, Canada. And that's the languages we almost lost, the traditions and cultures that identify only here. Some of them come, some of the traditions and cultures are very, very similar to other parts of the world, but here is very unique. So I hope this new Prime Minister, I hope he sees the light with the help of those 10 Indigenous elected members of Parliament and address this very seriously. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything that our people are now at the table of this governance structure. You know, our new Prime Minister says, oh, I'm going to do the world good by taking in new immigrants, homeless people. Look at us here, what's happening here. But also look at what we're willing to give back. We're willing to give back some knowledge of what Canada's like. You know, most immigrants don't know who we are, so there's a reluctance to be able to sit side by side with us. And we don't know who they are. So I'm really, really, really hopeful with the new influx of Aboriginal Indigenous MPs. I'm really hoping that they see the light and take this under consideration or take this as a goal within the next 4 years.
Truths have to be found, you know, whatever the outcome is, you know, let the process again run its course, and then, you know, whatever the outcome is, you know, and that's what we have to wait for, right, is that outcome. What I would like to see is for the rest of society, you know, worldwide to understand, right, what was being said was true, right, and that's all.